people then is club or political movement or whatever else that we join on purpose. Families are given, and the relationships are given. They can be rejected, but if they are, you lose part of yourself. They have to be grown into. And the church is there to make us the family of God, to give us the relationships to God in baptism and the other sacraments, so that we are truly sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. And that's a vision of things, people and their relationships, that is in some contradiction to a vision of things about individuals and their rights. We have to keep moving that vision because we're losing it to some extent. The whole definition of family has been deliberately deconstructed. Families are weakened, and so we fall back on the political discourse. The book is an attempt to say there's another form of public discourse that doesn't depend upon 17th century social contract theory. The last point then relates to what I was saying earlier, that in this theater of the world, the saeculum, God is there to help us to be free. St. Ambrose said, where there is faith, there is freedom. And that is counterintuitive for many people in our society. And so you have to make the case, not by beating people over the head with a Bible or a papal document or a catechism, but by entering into dialogue with them, using their vocabulary if necessary, but insisting that we have a right to our own. Once in that discussion with the president, Mr. Obama said that sure, religious people can make their case in public, but you have to use secular language. And I was saying, well, that isn't quite true. If we're going to be religious people, we can be publicly religious too, and not just religious in the church. And so therefore, how do we create a dialogue, a saeculum, a world where that conversation can take place, where people can use their own vocabulary? Everybody should have a right to speak his or her language, including the religious language, in public. It was a free commonwealth. It was a free society. So the sense of freedom, therefore, going back to that question of who is God, is bound up intimately with truth. And that's one area that's explored also. It's a connection we don't like to make, freedom and truth. Because if you say this is true, objectively, then it decreases my freedom subjectively, and you can't do that in our kind of society. So people will shy away from any public discussion about what is true, especially about something that's transcendent like God and religion, because they're worried that it will make us lose our freedom. But in fact, it's truth that makes us free. Not power, not clout, not money. It's truth that makes us free. When Pope John Paul II was beatified a couple of weeks ago, I was there in Rome, and it was wonderful, very moving when they unveiled a portrait, as they do, of the new Beatus up there on the facade of St. Peter's Basilica. All of a sudden, it strikes you that here is this man, whom I knew, preached a retreat once. He told me I talked too fast. He was an Italian, I was very nervous, but anyway. But here was this man who had celebrated the Eucharist on this piazza, and who had spilled his blood on that piazza. And they brought that blood up as the only relic we have. They didn't open the casket. There are no first-class relics of John Paul II. They're just this vial of blood that the hospital conserved. Anyway, all of a sudden, you saw that this man who was with you is really pictured where only saints are pictured. All the statues of the saints and all the newly beatified and canonized people who have answered the universal call to holiness that John Paul II so insisted would be recognized after the Second Vatican Council. There he was among them, and he read, this is true. That's where he belongs. We knew it, now it's confirmed. And the Pope, present Pope, Benedict XVI, referred to that in his homily. I don't know whether he was thinking about my emotional reaction, which I usually keep hidden in most circumstances, but apparently others, 1.5 million, were having the same emotion, maybe he was too. He said, why do we feel free here? Why is this a liberating moment? Because we know we're in the presence of truth. We know who Carlo Wojtyla was and is, we know where he is with the Lord among his friends. We know that what he told us about God, about Christ, about the world, about ourselves is true. And in that truth, we find freedom. That's not only one chapter, it's behind so many other chapters in the book. Once we get beyond the theoretical parts of it, how God acts, how he enforces our freedom, what's the relation between freedom and truth, we talk about bioethics, the human body as made in God's image and likeness, and particularly the risen body as our own destiny. When we do bioethics, we don't often think about the paradigm of Christ's risen body and Mary's body assumed to death as our future that should tell us something about how we do medicine now. We don't think about it because it's very different body, not bound by space and time as our bodies are, perfectly free to be anything he wants to be in the Eucharist. So It's not quite the same, but it creates a perspective that otherwise wouldn't be there. We talk about warfare, defending yourself while forgiving your enemies. It's very hard. There is just warfare, but it's challenged by terrorism, which falls outside the rules of a sovereign nation attacking another sovereign nation with a declaration of war, and then engaging according to the rules of war. Terrorism is a movement, and it's faceless. And so it's something that has to be faced, but you can't face it using classical just war theory alone, because it eludes it. Just war theory is also challenged by what the Pope told the United Nations when he was with us in 2008, that your organization of sovereign states isn't just there to keep peace among yourselves. It's there to protect the rights of all people, sometimes against their own government. So humanitarian intervention, which the Pope called for, is a form of warfare that falls outside of just war theory. So we have to rethink just war theory, and I try to do that in that chapter. Talk about rules of business and commerce, and talk about migrants and the immigration question. Talk about economic integration in our hemisphere that comes out of the Synod of Bishops meeting of the Bishops of America, as it was called, in the Americas and Caribbean as well, to try to talk about the way in which the new globalization of the economy in our hemisphere is leaving people, whether poor or richer, how it has to be addressed morally. And finally, globalization as a whole, reconsidering national sovereignty, is the subject of the last chapter. So it's chapter after chapter, and I say a lot of that, I have to admit, isn't particularly original in those chapters, but the perspective is important, and I think somewhat, not so much original, but not done so far by many others. So I hope that you find it of some interest, and whether you do or not, I hope you'll sell it. I'm very glad to be with you this morning. God bless you all.